The alarm bells rang through the massive Zephyrian warship as red lights flashed in every corridor. Commander Vextal stood on the bridge, his dark green scales catching the light as he watched the main screen. A small human vessel had been detected, near the forbidden border zone. Size and weapons? Vextal asked his second officer. Very small, sir. One pilot. Basic defense systems only, came the reply from Lieutenant Zorak. Vextal nodded. Humans were still new to this part of space. Most Zephyrian commanders had never even seen one before. They were supposed to be weak and unpredictable. Easy to handle. Capture it. Bring the pilot aboard for questioning. The human ship tried to run, but it was no match for the Stellar Dominion. Within minutes, the tractor beam had pulled the small craft into the docking bay. Vextal made his way down to see this human for himself. The docking bay was full of armed guards when the human pilot stepped out. He was shorter than most Zephyrians, with pale skin and brown hair. He wore a simple blue uniform with the name Morrison written on it. What surprised Vextal was that the human did not look afraid. Instead, he looked around with genuine curiosity. Amazing ship, the human said, looking up at the high ceiling. How many crew members do you have here? The guards looked confused. Prisoners usually begged for mercy or tried to fight. They did not ask about ship operations. I am Commander Vextal of the Zephyrian Empire, Vextal announced, stepping forward. You are now our prisoner. The human turned and smiled. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, Earth Defense Force. Nice to meet you, Commander. Jake extended his hand in what Vextal would later learn was a human greeting called a handshake. None of the Zephyrians knew what to do with it. Take him to detention level 7, Vextal ordered. Maximum security. As the guards led Jake away, Vextal noticed something odd. The human kept looking at everything with interest. He asked one guard about the metal used in the walls. He complimented another on the design of his weapon. Most prisoners cursed their captors or stayed silent. This one acted like he was on a tour. Detention level 7 was deep in the ship. The cells there were designed for the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy. Energy barriers that could stop a charging Brultar beast. Neural dampeners that prevented psychic attacks. Gravity generators that could make movement impossible. Jake was placed in cell block 12. The energy barrier hummed to life, creating a wall of blue light between him and freedom. Security cameras watched his every move. Guard Captain Morden took the first watch. The cell is escape-proof, Morden told Jake through the communication system. Many have tried. All have failed. Jake looked around the small room. It had a basic bed, a water dispenser, and a waste unit. Nothing else. He sat on the bed and smiled at the camera. This is actually pretty comfortable, Jake said. Thank you. Morden had been a prison guard for 15 years. No prisoner had ever thanked him before. An hour later, Dr. Kethra arrived with her medical scanner. She was the ship's chief science officer, and she wanted to study the human's biology. I need to take some readings, she announced through the barrier. Of course, Jake said, standing up. I'm curious about your species too. Are you related to the reptiles on my planet? Dr. Kethra paused. The human was asking her questions about science. Prisoners did not usually show interest in their captor's biology. We evolved separately, she found herself saying. Zephyrians, developed on a desert world. That explains the scales, Jake nodded. Very efficient for water conservation, smart evolutionary adaptation. As Dr. Kethra ran her scans, Jake asked more questions about Zephyrian physiology, their homeworld, and their technology. His questions were intelligent and showed genuine interest. She found herself talking more than she had planned. Your species is fascinating, Jake said when she finished. I hope I get to learn more about your culture. Dr. Kethra left feeling confused. The human's bio readings were normal. No signs of fear or stress. His brain activity showed curiosity and empathy, not the anger or desperation she expected from a prisoner. Later that day, Commander Vextal came to interrogate Jake personally. He expected the human to be broken down by isolation and fear. Instead, Jake greeted him warmly. Commander, good to see you again. How long have you been in space service? I asked the questions here, Vextal replied sternly. What are human military positions in this sector? Jake thought for a moment. I can't give you tactical information, Commander. I'm sure you understand. But I'd be happy to tell you about Earth if you're interested. We have some beautiful places you might enjoy. For the next hour, Vextal tried to get military information from Jake. The human politely refused to answer strategic questions, but eagerly shared stories about Earth's oceans, mountains, and cities. He described human art, music, and food with such enthusiasm that Vextal found himself genuinely interested. Why are you not afraid? Vextal finally asked. Jake considered this seriously. Fear won't help me here, Commander. Besides, you've treated me fairly so far. Your people seem honorable. That evening, Vextal reviewed the day's reports. The human prisoner was unlike anything in their databases. No escape attempts, no demands, or threats. Instead, he had somehow made every person who met him more curious about humanity. Guard Captain Morden requested permission to stay on Jake's detail. Dr. Kethra asked to continue her biological studies. Even the maintenance crew who cleaned the detention level mentioned the polite human who thanked them for their work. Vextal stood in his quarters, looking out at the stars. In 20 years of military service, he had never encountered a prisoner. Like Jake Morrison. The human was supposed to be their captive, but somehow he was the one asking all the questions and getting all the answers. Something told Vextal that this human was going to change everything aboard the Stellar Dominion. He just did not know how much. Dr. Kethra returned to her laboratory with a puzzle that kept her awake at night. Jake Morrison's biological readings made no sense. After 3 days of captivity, his stress hormones remained completely normal. His heart rate was steady. His brain patterns showed curiosity and calm thinking, not the fear and anger that every other prisoner displayed. She pulled up files from previous detainees. The Altarian spy had shown extreme stress within hours. The Centauri rebel had tried to bite guards on his first day. Even the peaceful Andromedan trader had begged for release. But Jake Morrison asked questions about Zephyrian art and thanked guards for bringing him food. Computer-run comparison analysis on prisoner stress patterns, she commanded. The results appeared on her screen. Jake's readings were completely outside normal prisoner behavior. In fact, his brain activity suggested he was enjoying himself. Meanwhile, Guard Captain Mordun was having his own strange experience. During his morning shift, Jake had asked about his family. "Do you have children, Captain?" Jake had said through the energy barrier. Mordun was not supposed to share personal information with prisoners, but something about Jake's genuine interest made him answer. 2 sons, Mordun found himself saying. That's wonderful. What are their ages? 15 and 12 cycles old. Jake smiled. Great ages. They must be getting into all kinds of trouble. On Earth, we say that's when kids start thinking they know everything. Mordun laughed despite himself. His younger son had just argued with him about military tactics the night before. Somehow this human understood what it was like to raise children, even though they were different species. How did you know? Mordun asked. Young people are the same everywhere, I think, Jake replied. They need to test boundaries to learn who they are. It's actually a good sign when they argue with you. Shows they're thinking for themselves. For the rest of his shift, Mordun found himself telling Jake about his son's latest adventures. The human listened carefully and offered insights that actually made sense. When shift change came, Mordun did not want to leave. That afternoon, Junior Technician Piptor was working on a power coupling problem near Jake's cell. The same coupling had been failing for months, causing power fluctuations throughout the ship. Chief Engineer Gralvin had tried everything, but the problem kept coming back. Excuse me, Jake called out. Is that a plasma flow regulator you're working on? Piptor looked up, surprised. You know our technology. Basic principles are probably similar to ours, Jake said. What's the problem? Piptor explained the recurring power failures. Jake listened carefully, asking technical questions about flow rates and pressure differentials. On Earth, we had similar problems with our early fusion reactors, Jake said. We discovered the issue was harmonic resonance in the coupling joints. Try adding a dampening field at exactly half the primary frequency. Piptor had never heard of that solution. Zephyrian engineering focused on brute force approaches. But Jake's suggestion was simple and elegant. It took only minutes to implement. The power coupling ran perfectly. For the first time in months, there were no fluctuations. Piptor ran to tell Chief Engineer Gralvin, who could not believe such a simple fix had solved their chronic problem. Word spread quickly through the engineering department. The human prisoner had solved a problem that had stumped their best minds. By evening, Jake's cell area had become an unofficial gathering place. Off-duty crew members found excuses to walk by detention level 7. Some brought technical problems. Others just wanted to hear Jake's stories about Earth. Jake told them about human festivals where people gathered just to celebrate being alive. He described music concerts where thousands of people sang together. He explained the concept of weekends, when humans stopped working just to spend time with family and friends. "You stop working for 2 whole days every week?" asked Communications Officer Nalara. "Most people do," Jake nodded. "We learned that rest makes us more productive when we do work. Plus, life isn't just about work. It's about relationships, experiences, learning new things." The Zephyrians had never heard of such ideas. Their society focused entirely on duty and efficiency. The concept of scheduled rest for happiness seemed revolutionary. Dr. Kethra watched the growing crowds around Jake's cell with fascination. She had studied dozens of species, but none that created social bonds this quickly. Humans, it seemed, had an instinct for connection that crossed species barriers. She began a new study, monitoring not just Jake's biology, but the ship's social patterns. Crew efficiency was increasing. Conflict reports were down. Even the mess hall reported higher satisfaction with food, though nothing had changed in the menu. "The human is affecting ship operations," she reported to Commander Vextal. "Negatively?" Vextal asked, concerned. "Actually, positively. Crew morale is at the highest levels I've recorded. Productivity is up 12%. Interdepartment cooperation has improved significantly." Vextal frowned. How could one prisoner in a maximum security cell improve his entire ship's performance? That night, he decided to observe Jake personally. He found the human teaching guard Captain Mordun a simple meditation technique. "Just breathe slowly and focus on the present moment," Jake was saying. "Don't worry about tomorrow's problems or yesterday's mistakes. Just be here, right now." Mordun, a tough military veteran, was sitting cross-legged on the floor outside Jake's cell, breathing deeply with his eyes closed. He looked more relaxed than Vextal had ever seen him. "This helps with stress?" Mordun asked. "It helped me survive pilot training," Jake replied. "When everything gets overwhelming, just remember to breathe." Vextal watched, amazed. His head of security was taking mental health advice from their prisoner, and it seemed to be working. As he walked back to his quarters, Vextal realized something unsettling. Jake Morrison was not acting like their prisoner. Instead, somehow, Jake was acting like their teacher. 2 weeks had passed since Jake's capture, and the Stellar Dominion felt like a different ship. The changes started small but grew every day. In the kitchen, Chef Corvan was trying something new with the daily meal preparations. The human suggested, "Adding heat in layers," Corvan explained to his staff. "He calls it seasoning. We add different spices at different times during cooking." The kitchen crew had always simply mixed everything together and heated it. Jake's method took longer, but the results were incredible. The crew's usual complaints about bland food had stopped. Instead, mealtimes had become social events where people lingered to talk and laugh. "He also said we should try cooking together as a team activity," Corvan continued. "Take turns teaching each other our favorite recipes from our home worlds." The idea was strange to Zephyrians who usually worked alone. But the cooking teams were having fun, and food quality had improved dramatically. Even Commander Vextal had complimented the meals. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Gralvin was implementing another human concept. After Jake's power coupling solution, the crew had started bringing him other technical problems. But Jake always asked the same question first. "What do you think might work?" Jake would say. "You know your systems better than I do." This approach, was revolutionary to Zephyrians who expected senior officers to have all the answers. Jake encouraged everyone to share ideas, no matter how junior they were. He called it brainstorming. The human believes good ideas can come from anyone, Gralvin told his team. We will try this approach. The results were amazing. Junior technicians who had never spoken up before started offering creative solutions. Problems that used to take days to solve were being fixed in hours. The engineering department's efficiency ratings had reached record levels, but the biggest change was happening in the ship's medical bay. Healer Sylvan had been fascinated by Jake's meditation lessons and stress management techniques. Zephyrian, medicine focused on physical healing, but Jake talked about mental health as equally important. On Earth, we learned that the mind and body are connected, Jake had explained during one of their conversations. If your mind is stressed, your body gets sick. If you heal the mind, the body heals faster too. Sylvan had started offering meditation sessions to crew members. At first, only a few attended, but word spread quickly about how much better people felt afterward. Soon, the medical bay was hosting daily wellness groups. The human taught us about something called work-life balance, Sylvan reported to the senior staff. Our crew has been working too hard for too long. They need time to rest and connect with each other. Commander Vextal was reviewing these reports with growing amazement. Every department was reporting improvements. But the most surprising change was in the conflict resolution office. Lieutenant Commander Ral Eth handled disputes between crew members. Usually she spent her days dealing with fights, arguments, and complaints. But complaints had dropped by 60% since Jake's arrival. The human showed us a different way to handle disagreements, Raleth explained. Instead of deciding who is right and who is wrong, we look for solutions where everyone wins. Jake called this compromise. When two departments argued over resources instead of giving everything to one side, they found creative ways to share. When crew members had personal conflicts, they talked through their problems instead of just avoiding each other. He says, conflict is not always bad, Raleth continued. Sometimes disagreement means people care about doing things well. The key is to argue about ideas, not attack each other personally. These concepts were changing how the entire crew interacted. People still disagreed, but they did it respectfully. They listened to each other instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. The changes were most visible during shift changes. Before Jake's arrival, crew members simply reported to their stations and began work. Now, people gathered in small groups, sharing stories and jokes. The corridors filled with conversation and laughter. Guard Captain Morden had become Jake's unofficial coordinator, organizing the steady stream of crew members who wanted to talk with the human. Scientists brought research problems. Engineers brought technical challenges. Even the ship's counselors brought questions about helping troubled crew members. I have never seen anything like this, Dr. Kethra told Commander Vextal. The human has created a social network that spans the entire ship. Departments that rarely worked together are now collaborating daily. Vextal nodded grimly. He was receiving commendations from Fleet Command for his ship's unprecedented performance. The Stellar Dominion had become the most efficient vessel in the sector, but he knew the truth. Their success was because of their prisoner, not their commander. What happens when we transfer him to the prison planet? Vextal asked. Dr. Kethra had been wondering the same thing. I believe crew performance will decline rapidly. The human has become central to ship operations, even from his cell. That evening, Vextal made an unscheduled visit to Detention Level 7. He found Jake teaching a group of off-duty crew members about human philosophy. We have a saying on Earth, Jake was explaining. Treat others the way you want to be treated. It sounds simple, but it changes everything when you really practice it. What if they are your enemy? Asked one crew member. Jake smiled. Sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy is to make them your friend. Most conflicts happen because people don't understand each other. Once you understand someone, it's hard to hate them. As Vextal listened, he realized that Jake had done exactly that. He had turned an entire ship of potential enemies into friends, not through force or manipulation, but through simple kindness and genuine interest in others. The most dangerous thing about Jake Morrison was not that he was a human, Prisoner. It was that he made everyone around him want to be better people. 3 weeks had passed when the message arrived from Zephyrian High Command. Commander Vextal read it twice, his heart sinking with each word. Orders to transfer Jake Morrison to prison planet Zathor within 48 hours. No delays permitted. Vextal called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. Dr. Kethra, Guard Captain Morden, Healer Sylvan, and Chief Engineer Gralvin gathered in the conference room. All of them looked troubled. "You have seen the orders," Vextal said quietly. "The human transfers tomorrow." The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Dr. Kethra spoke. "Commander, I must share my complete findings about the human's impact on this ship." She activated the main display. Charts and graphs filled the screen, showing dramatic improvements across every department. Productivity is up 43%. Medical visits for stress-related illness have dropped by 70%. Equipment failures are at an all-time low. Most importantly, crew satisfaction surveys show the highest happiness levels in fleet records. "The human did this?" Vextal asked, though he already knew the answer. "Not directly," Dr. Kethra continued. "He taught us new ways of thinking and working together. But these improvements will disappear when he leaves. I have been monitoring crew behavior. Their new patterns are still connected to regular interaction with Morrison." Healer Sylvan leaned forward. "Commander, I must report something else. 17 crew members have requested transfers to human space as cultural exchange participants." "What?" Vextal stood up sharply. "They want to study human society directly. They believe our species can learn more from humans than we originally thought." Guard Captain Morden shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I must add that over 60 crew members have signed a petition requesting Morrison remain aboard as a cultural advisor, rather than being transferred to prison." Vextal stared at his officers. His crew was asking to keep their prisoner and send themselves to human territory instead. It was unprecedented in military history. "There is more," Chief Engineer Gralvin said. "Morrison has been teaching us about human innovation methods. He explained how humans make rapid technological advances through something called open collaboration. Instead of keeping secrets, they share knowledge to solve problems faster." "That makes no strategic sense," Vextal replied. "That is what I thought too." Gralvin nodded. "But Morrison explained that humans advance faster by helping each other than by competing against each other. He says information shared is information multiplied." Dr. Kethra pulled up another display. "I have been studying human social structures based on Morrison's descriptions. Commander, their entire civilization is built on voluntary cooperation, rather than hierarchical control." "Impossible," Vextal said. "How do they maintain order?" "Through something they call social contracts," Dr. Kethra explained. "People agree to follow rules because they helped create those rules and because the rules benefit everyone. Leaders are chosen by popular support, not by conquest or appointment. Their military strength comes not from superior weapons," Healer Sylvan added, "but from soldiers who fight willingly to protect their communities rather than being forced to fight for distant rulers." Vextal sat down heavily. Everything his officers were describing contradicted basic Zephyrian military and social doctrine, yet the evidence was clear. These human methods worked better than their own. "Sir," Guard Captain Morden said carefully, "I have a personal request. Speak. I want to volunteer as the first cultural exchange participant. I want to live among humans and learn their methods directly." "As do I," said Dr. Kethra immediately. "And I," added Healer Sylvan. "I also volunteer," Chief Engineer Gralvin concluded. Vextal looked around the table at his senior staff. These were experienced officers, decorated veterans, the backbone of his command, and they all wanted to become voluntary prisoners of humanity. "Why?" he asked quietly. Morden answered first. "The human taught me that there is more to life than duty and efficiency. He showed me how to be a better father to my sons. I want to learn more about raising children who think for themselves while still respecting others. Morrison helped me understand that true scientific advancement comes from questioning everything, including our own assumptions," Dr. Kethra said. Human science progresses faster because they encourage debate and challenge authority when evidence contradicts tradition. Healer Sylvan nodded. I want to study their medical approach to mental health. They treat the whole person, not just symptoms. Their methods could help our people live happier, healthier lives. Their engineering philosophy of elegant simplicity has revolutionized my thinking, Grelvin added. I want to learn how they train young engineers to be creative problem solvers instead of just following procedures. Vextal stood and walked to the viewing port. Outside, stars moved slowly past as the ship continued its patrol route. Everything looked the same as 3 weeks ago, but everything had changed. What you are describing, he said finally, sounds like treason against Zephyrian values? No, sir, Morden replied firmly. It sounds like evolution. That evening, Vextal made his final visit to Jake's cell. He found the human reading technical manuals that crew members had brought him, still trying to help solve problems even though he would be transferred the next day. Morrison, Vextal said, my officers want to become prisoners in human space. Jake looked up, surprised. Why would they want that? They say you have taught them things that will make them better people and better officers. Jake set down the manual and walked to the energy barrier. Commander, they don't need to be prisoners, they just need to be students. The best way to learn about other people is to live among them as friends, not captives. And if I release you, what happens to my ship's performance? Jake smiled. It will get even better. Because you won't need me anymore. You will have learned to create these improvements yourselves. That night, Commander Vextal made the most difficult decision of his career. Commander Vextal sat in his quarters until dawn, staring at 2 sets of orders on his desk. The first were his original commands to transfer Jake Morrison to prison planet Zathor. The second was a message he had written to Human Defense Command, requesting an unprecedented prisoner exchange program. He had never disobeyed a direct order in 20 years of service. But he had also never commanded a ship that performed at the levels the Stellar Dominion now achieved. The decision came down to one question. What was better for his people and his crew? At 800 hours, Vextal called his senior staff to the conference, room one final time. I have made my decision, he announced. Dr. Kethra, prepare a complete report on Morrison's impact on ship operations. Include recommendations for implementing human social and technical methods throughout the fleet. Yes, sir, she replied, hope showing in her voice. Guard Captain Morden, draft a formal request for volunteer cultural exchange positions. Anyone who wants to study human society directly may apply. Morden straightened with excitement. How many positions, sir? As many as needed. Chief Engineer Grelvin, prepare technical documentation of all improvements Morrison suggested. This information will be shared with the entire Zephyrian fleet. Shared openly, sir? Grelvin asked, surprised. Morrison taught us that shared knowledge is multiplied knowledge. If these methods work for us, they will work for other ships too. Healer Sylvan leaned forward eagerly. Commander, what about Morrison himself? Vextal smiled for the first time in days. That requires a conversation with Human Defense Command. 2 hours later, Vextal stood outside Jake's cell for what he hoped would be the last time. Jake was teaching meditation techniques to a group of off-duty crew members, as had become his daily routine. Morrison, please join me in conference. Room 2. Jake looked surprised but followed willingly. For the first time in 3 weeks, he walked through the ship without energy barriers or guard escort. Crew members they passed smiled and waved. Some called out thanks for various help Jake had provided. In the conference room, Vextal activated the communication system. The screen showed Admiral Sarah Parker of Human Defense Command, flanked by several other officers. Admiral Parker, Vextal began formally. I am Commander Vextal of the Zephyrian vessel Stellar Dominion. I believe you are missing one of your pilots. Jake stepped into view of the camera. Admiral Parker, good to see you, ma'am. Lieutenant Morrison, Admiral Parker replied with obvious relief. Are you well? Have you been mistreated? Actually, I've been treated very well, Jake said honestly. These are good people, Admiral. I've learned a lot about their culture. Admiral Parker looked confused. Commander Vextal, are you requesting prisoner exchange negotiations? No, Admiral. Vextal replied. I am requesting something that has never been attempted before. A voluntary cultural immersion program between our species. Explain. Vextal took a deep breath. Lieutenant Morrison has taught my crew methods of cooperation, problem-solving, and social organization that have dramatically improved our ship's performance. My officers are requesting permission to study human society directly. You want to send Zephyrian officers to human space? Admiral Parker asked. As voluntary participants in a cultural exchange program, they would live in human communities, study human methods, and report their findings back to the Zephyrian fleet. Jake looked amazed. Commander, are you serious? Completely serious. Morrison, you have shown us that former enemies can become allies through understanding and respect. We want to extend that process formally between our species. Admiral Parker consulted with her staff off-camera for several minutes. When she returned, her expression was cautious but interested. This is highly unusual, Commander Vextal. What would you want in return? Human advisors to work with our fleet, teaching the methods Morrison demonstrated, and permission for Morrison to continue his cultural work if he chooses. I'm not a diplomat, Commander, Jake said. I'm just a pilot who likes meeting new people. Which is exactly why this worked, Vextal replied. You treated us as individuals, not as enemies. You shared knowledge instead of hoarding it. You showed us that strength comes from cooperation, not domination. Admiral Parker made her decision. Commander Vextal, I am authorizing preliminary negotiations for a formal cultural exchange program. Lieutenant Morrison will be released immediately to return to Earth for debriefing and to help establish the program framework. Thank you, Admiral, Vextal said with genuine gratitude. Jake stood to leave, then paused. Commander, there's one more thing you should know about humans. What is that? We never forget our friends, and the crew of the Stellar Dominion will always be welcome in human space. 6 months later, the first group of Zephyrian cultural exchange participants arrived on Earth. Guard Captain Mordun brought his sons to see human schools. Dr. Kethra joined a research team studying collaborative science methods. Healer Sylvan worked in human hospitals learning integrated medical approaches. Chief Engineer Gralvin studied at technical universities. Meanwhile, human advisors worked throughout the Zephyrian fleet, teaching the principles Jake had demonstrated. Treat others with respect, share knowledge freely, solve problems together, and remember that former enemies can become the strongest allies. Commander Vextal kept Jake's energy barrier as a reminder in his office, but he had changed the display message. Instead of maximum security detention, it now read, Humanity's greatest weapon, making friends. In his final log entry about the incident, Vextal wrote, We captured a human prisoner and learned the most important lesson in military history. The strongest force in the universe is not advanced weapons or superior numbers. It is the simple human ability to see enemies as potential friends and to treat them accordingly. We thought we were containing Lieutenant Jake Morrison. Instead, he contained us all within a larger understanding of what it means to be truly civilized. The war between humans and Zephyrians officially ended not with a peace treaty, but with a friendship pact. And it all began because one human prisoner chose to be curious instead of afraid.